There's a lot going on in the world right now, and whether we perceive that to be good or bad, I think we can all agree that a pause would be useful. So let's take a look at pauses that Berit and I made this weekend.
So today we are talking about not just taking a pause, but really taking a full embodied, full body pause. And we're talking about getting to a state we call zero. When you are experiencing, as maybe some of us have been in the last few weeks, a lot of different emotions at once, or maybe one really intense emotion, zero is that place where you can pull yourself together. You have a composure where you feel extremely calm, but yet alert and ready to dive into the next moment. I'm Berit Elizabeth, founder of Emotive Agility Training, and this is the Edge of the Stage podcast, Life Lessons from Performance Training. Welcome to our very first episode.
I'm Matthew Ellenwood, founder of Ellenwood Studios and the creator of Emoverity Training. Whether you are a professional or a performer, we're here to offer techniques, tools, and tips from performer training to connect yourself with others in purpose, presence, all while navigating your own life as a human.
Matthew, how would you describe zero in a performance context? Can you share that with us to start off?
There are two major aspects. One is artistic. In any artistic medium, we need something blank, a blank canvas, a chunk of marble, a bit of clay. For actors, that's our face, that's our body, that's our expression. So if we're in zero, and then we drop an emotion on it. It's very vibrant. It's like throwing that paint on the canvas, Jackson Pollock style. Likewise, if there's just too much emotion, if it's just too chaotic to come out of it cleanly, it really draws the audience in, and it takes a lot of practice to do that. Personally, it helps to regulate the nervous system. So maybe there's a lot of uncertainty or stage fright. We acknowledge that. We accept that as a reality, as a truth. We don't judge it. But then we go to zero to get that centered, calm, focused state that you were mentioning, so that that's the energy that we start with, move into character, and then go on the stage. We're not taking our fear with us. We're transforming it, cleaning it, so that we can then move forward into our performance. So artistic and personal. How about you in the professional life with an emotional intelligence framework? What do you sense zero is beneficial for in a professional setting?
Well, for a keynote speaker,
Yeah.
let's say, walking onto a stage, walking up to a podium with a couple hundred people sitting out in the audience to kick off a conference. Zero is the optimal state to be in that moment before you start to speak. You're walking out on stage. You have to be aware of maybe you just left a bunch of conversations backstage. Maybe you've got something going on after this moment that you're there, that you're paid to be there to headline that conference. It's that moment of pause that attracts the audience attention as the lights go down and your PowerPoint comes up on the screen. And that's an example of a really intense macro situation. So, professional speakers deal with these very high volume events, and they are the singular focus and of that event, of that keynote. And when they walk out, they need to hop into a zero state right before they begin to speak to be effective and compelling in that talk that they're being paid to give. But if we think about a one on one context, when zero would be the state you want to get in, let's say you have an appointment to meet with your boss and you're going to ask for a raise, right? Right before that moment, and probably the whole day and night leading up to it, you've got a lot of different emotions flying around. and you're rehearsing what you want to say. You want to come across as cool and collected, and you're watching the clock tick down until the time that you're going to walk into their office. And at that moment, being able to access zero and be in a state not of relaxation, but a state of focus, presence, and calm where you can actually access your words and what you wanted to say and all the resources that you have to go in there and ask for that raise. So, through an emotional intelligence perspective, being able to regulate your emotions and first to be aware of those emotions before you begin is the difference between having things go the way you want or having things leaving you frazzled.
Yeah, just the sense of it's too open, it's chaotic.
Yes,
There's
yes.
some container, some choice to assist you in these difficult tasks.
And zero is something that we can all access, but it's not enough to just know about what zero is and how great it is. You can't just by sheer will get yourself into that state the moment before you step up to the podium, the moment before you walk into the room. So we're talking about the fact that because this is embodied, you can actually train yourself to access that state. Right, Matthew?
That's right. The mind understands concepts very rapidly, and we have all this information at our fingertips now through articles, through podcasts, through Instagram. But knowing something is different than doing something and being able to do something. So the benefit of performer training is we know a musician needs their scales, their chords before they can really play. Dancers need their bar and their technique. Athletes, you're a professional trainer, Barrett. How much
Yes,
take athletes to do their routines before they can actually, with strength training and all the rest of that, before they can do soccer or whatever.
you have to run the drills. Yep. As a personal trainer, we're training the body to do things automatically. You have to do those boring training drills in order to make it happen when you're in that moment on the field, right?
So hours of practice and rehearsal are needed with focus to have that be reliable time and time. And we're going to tell you how to do it midway through the podcast. So hang on.
Yes. And before we hop into that, when we were planning this episode, Matthew, I kept interchangeably referring to zero as neutral. And I learned, and I think it's really interesting to share why you specifically use the term zero and not neutral. So, can you tell us the distinction between the term neutral and the term zero and why you're so deliberate about distinguishing those?
Great. So zero comes from the affective science world. In the FACS manual, the facial action coding system, Paul Ekman and his team had a before and after shot. So in a photo, zero, no emotional affect to rage or some other description. And same in videos. You would begin with nothing and then watch for the changes. So it's a really convenient and clear way to say there is no behavioral affect of an emotional state. Neutral is a value judgment assessment based on some subjective sense of normal. Everybody's normal is different for their lived experience. Folks who have survived trauma, different marginalized groups, may have a very different sense of what their average is than someone who has not experienced those things. So using neutral as an assumption isn't helpful because that person who suffered trauma may never get to another person's neutral. The goal,
Absolutely.
metaphorically, is to try to get to a zero, no affect. But internally, subjectively, there may be some emotions still there for many people, and that's okay. It's not a complete zero, but it's also not neutral. It has a perspective.
Absolutely. So zero is blank externally, and using the term neutral implies a subjective internal experience. And there are some people that walk through the world with a heightened level of emotion all the time. And so who's to say what, right? Like like me saying this is really high and this is really low is only relevant to my experience in the social context of the world, my history, the way I've been treated, my objectives. And I see and appreciate the term zero, and I'm glad that we have it. So it's rather a privilege to be able to use the term neutral, right? So who's to say we can get there in any state, in any
Right.
sense?
I think just being aware that term is loaded with some sense of what is normative with privilege If it's used in your pedagogy, we have to navigate it carefully. So I choose to avoid it entirely by saying 0.
Makes sense. I wonder if we could move to the preliminaries of how we access zero and what that looks like. Could you start us off with that?
So before we can even make a shift to 0, we really need to assess what's going on at all levels of existence. So I think there are 3 major categories that we can be a little bit more granular with. The first one is your environment or the context, literally the room you're in. And then, is there anyone in that room with you, particularly strangers? So the social component of that context. That is the big first overarching category. Context, environment, social component.
The second one is your physical state. So, how are you receiving and releasing your breath? Is it really fast? Is it really slow? Is it through your nose, through your mouth? Then your physical body, how are you moving your body in space, or are you holding yourself in a slouch? Are you twisted? Are you leaning forward? Just an awareness of that overall. And then your energy level on a scale of 1 exhausted to 10 invigorated, being able to be aware of placing your energy level. And those 3 things contribute to your awareness of your physical state.
The most abstract is then the mental concept, the mind. So, what are we focused in on? Where's our brain chattering to us? Emotionally, can we drill down and find a granularity for what we're feeling? And I think the most important thing mentally, where's our curiosity in this given moment?
This is what we're talking about with emotional intelligence. If you don't have an awareness of where you are at initially, how can you make a shift?
So, all of this really drives down to 2 concepts: comfort or discomfort. Comfort, discomfort in the environment, comfort or discomfort in the body, comfort or discomfort in the mind. When we rapidly assess those, then we have the ability to determine if 0 is going to even be helpful or where we can go to next, which is what Berit was pinpointing with the emotional intelligence, knowing and strategizing based on what we're about to experience.
So it's the context, it's the body, and it's the mind, and the awareness of all 3. And if you have that awareness, then you're able to move into a 0 state. That awareness is key.
It's essential because you can't match the change, just like that photograph with nothing to a shift. We can't document what happens if we don't document what is there present first. So moving into a 0 state, 0 has 4 components that we focus in on: a breath component, eye component, facial expression, and body posture. This podcast, we're just going to focus on breath and eyes, which is really more of an internal expression of getting closer to that 0. The face and the body are more behavioral, identifiable, body language kinds of things. We'll look at that in our next episode.
And I just want to say this happens so quickly. That moment that you are about to walk into somebody's office, or that moment that you are stepping on stage for a performance, whether you are on stage or in a professional or personal situation, this 0 moment happens very quickly. And it actually can come in a moment when you're very excited or skited, scared and excited at the
I
same
never heard
time.
that before. I love that.
I should quote Glennon Doyle, but I also just heard it in a Tori Amos song. So,
Ah, story.
yes. And she just came out with an album like a week ago. So when does 0 help us the most? It helps us the most when we are in this very thrilling, skited moment, maybe being scared and excited, and you want to get to 0 very quickly.
And just as Barrett was mentioning, getting to that 0 very quickly is only as good as how much you've practiced it on your own. So let's take a look at an attempt to get to 0 that doesn't work.
Hey, I ain't gonna lie to you.
Stop talking to me.
It's scary.
You're the last person I want to talk to right now.
All right, here we go, 100%.
Yep. I'll pay you guys $40 just to let me get off this thing.
Too late now.
There is absolutely no turning back.
Ready?
Head back, hands up, here we go.
Plus the other thing.
Alright.
Hey, man, you want to know about the other thing?
Holy Holy Oh, Anthony! Anthony, wake up! Ah!
Oh my god, this is great. Get me down! I gotta wax that camera.
You
Oh, my head hurts. My head hurts.
Oh,
Oh my god. I might want to get on again. My head hurts bad.
you passed out.
Why is my bottle tingling? I mean, my body. My body's tingling. Okay, laughing makes it better.
Oh man, that was a lot faster than KK.
Why do my hands feel like that? Oh, my body's tingling.
Oh man.
Wow.
I've been on those. I hate those rides.
Thank you.
I do. And what a great metaphor, what a great externalized metaphor of like how you're feeling right before you're going in to ask for a raise, or walking up to that podium.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Insane. So regulation strategies are not working here. We see this breath, which is the zero breath. We see the eyes going on the horizon, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work for him. Why? The context, for one, it's a thrill ride. It's huge. Now, maybe, Barrett, if he had been able to assess his baseline state and regulate in zero before giving on the ride and continue that regulation because he'd practiced, he might have found it more enjoyable. Like the older male figure that he was riding with found it very fun. So maybe it was a practice issue, and you, no matter the coping strategies, just try.
I mean, he was definitely trying there. Like he knew that if he took deep breaths, that was a good way to calm oneself down most of the
The
time.
eyes on the horizon. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. And a lot of us try that a lot. Like it's very common knowledge that taking deep breaths is something that you can go to when you're feeling dysregulated, right? But this was definitely an extreme situation. And what didn't work well, he passed out and he came back. I'd love to hear you talk more about what he could have done and what we could do when we're in a moment when we feel like that, even if it's not on a thrill ride.
Well, one of the things as he passes out, right? The technical term for this is a vasovagal response or possuming. And when our nervous system becomes so overwhelmed, that is the reasonable physiological response. It takes us out. It's a safety mechanism and it's really useful. I'm glad his body did that for him. He's experiencing the tingling in his hands, the headache. That's what happens. And then he says, maybe I'd want to ride this again, right? So he's enjoying it, or like laughter helps. So things that are lower muscle tonus, joy, all the rest of that, they can help us. He's been through the experience. He survived. Now he knows. When we are practicing something like zero over and over again, it then just becomes a normative strategy that our body goes to like a program. So I think you would just need more practice in zero doing it for it to be effective and it to be a joyful experience. So this is extreme, right? But we all know those moments where we're going to need zero.
Yes, the ones where you feel like skited, where you feel both scared and excited at the same time. And he didn't, like you said, he wanted to do it again. So it's, wanting to do something that feels really good, that actually is something you want to do, but at the same time, how do we regulate? How do we get to zero when it terrifies you at the same time?
So it may not be a thrill ride, but if you're living with roommates and there's always dirty dishes in the sink and you are at your limit, you are ready to just throw those dishes, break them everywhere. Before that happens, taking that pause, going to zero, letting that 0 inform how you actually want to set that firm boundary with your roommates so it doesn't happen again and you don't need to buy a whole bunch more plates. Again, not as high stakes as the thrill ride, but still a place where the pause is important. How about for you, Barrett? Can you think of a scenario that's important in a personal life?
Yeah, well, I've definitely been there with the dishes and wanting to maintain the peace and hold the boundary. No, but I'm also thinking of like those really serious moments when you are witnessing as a bystander, witnessing someone being harassed. Let's say you're on a subway and you're watching someone who's being sexually harassed and you are compelled to intervene. You know you're going to, and it scares you, but you have to. So getting to a state of you can be most effective if you can bring yourself, compose yourself, and then act because you don't know what kind of reaction you're going to face, but you are going to intervene anyway.
Right, and that adrenaline, that cortisol,
Mm-hmm.
you may be well over your head, but you can still do something, right? Whereas if you take the
Right.
pause, it gives you a moment to go, I have these strategies that I know that I practice that are going to be effective.
Exactly. And that, like we were saying, this happens in a split second.
Second,
That's why the body and the components of the body are so important because you only have a few seconds to react and your body and your muscle memory is going to kick in if you practice a 0 state and if you know how to train your body to get there, right? So impactful.
it is hugely impactful. Shall we begin with how to do it?
Would you lead us in that?
I will. So if we have a piece of paper and pen to write with at the moment, that's great. If not, don't worry about it. Take mental notes. You can always come back to this episode at this point to learn. We're going to begin with what we call the baseline state exercise, taking the theory from the front of this podcast to now the practice. The baseline, group one, where are you in your environment? And are you very comfortable, rated as a 1, to very uncomfortable in your environment, rated as a 10? You can even put why. There are sirens going. It's cold. I'm uncomfortable in my chair. I'm at a 3. So name it for yourself. What's the environment? Socially, is there anyone else in the environment with you? And what does that do to your comfort? There's no one in here with me except Berit and you all watching, and you're all watching in the recording. So right now, mostly I'm at a 5. I'm kind of at an average. I'm a little nervous, but I'm okay. Where are you socially if there are other people in the room? That's our context and environment component. Berit, can you bring attention to the body components?
Yeah, so right now I'm thinking about how am I breathing? What's happening with my inhalation, my exhalation? Is it fast? Is it slow? And then how am I sitting on the chair? Am I forward? Am I twisted? And am I upright or kind of relaxed? And then just take a second right now to also assess your energy scale. If 1 is exhausted and 10 is extremely invigorated, where is your energy level at the moment as we enter into this?
Then maybe the most challenging for some people, mentally. Where's your attention right now? What are you focused in on? And it's okay if it's not the podcast, if you've got something up in the afternoon you have to deal with. Just name it authentically and honestly. What's your attention focused on at this moment?
And also, what emotions right now are you currently experiencing?
Last, and I think this is the most important, what are you curious about in this moment? Could be anything. It could be what we just discussed, the environment, the body, the mind, or it could be something that you want to research later. What are you curious about? All of this that we just did is the baseline. And every time you enter into a new environment, try asking yourself these questions. Am I comfortable or uncomfortable in the environment, the social, my breath, my emotion, my body, my energy, my mental attention, my emotional, what is this that I'm feeling? And where's my curiosity? And the more you do it, the more it is so quick, seconds, 2 to 3 seconds, but it lets you know where you are and accept where you are. That's how we do the baseline state. Do you have anything else to add, Berit?
The strategy here is to be able to quickly assess these three things: comfort or discomfort in your context, in your body, in your mental state.
We have to understand where we are if we're going to see the benefit of zero. We won't see a benefit of zero if we don't know where we are.
Absolutely. Yeah. So what is the getting into zero? Then what are the next steps?
So there are 4 components. There's the breath, the eyes, the face, and the body. The face and the body are our next podcast. So breath, it starts in through your nose as the pathway in. Its pathway out is through your mouth with a little bit of effort in the lips. So try that a few times. In through the nose, out through the mouth, like you're making a candle flame flicker. A couple more cycles on your own just to feel this pathway in and out. Last cycle. There's no rush. There's no hurry. And out. Now, to focus that even more, we want to become aware of how many beats we spend breathing in versus out. It's going to be dependent on your body and your comfort. It should feel easy. It shouldn't feel taxing. It's not like taking a deep breath before swimming. It should feel very simple. So I'm going to count with my fingers. You try for yourself. In, out. Maybe that was too many or too quickly. So keep breathing in this cycle a few times until you find the duration that you like in and out. In when you're ready. Out when you're ready. One more cycle. And out. Before you do anything else, just ask yourself, is there a shift from what you were experiencing in your baseline state to just this first component of breath? Did you notice a shift in your body? If you didn't, that's okay. But if you did, what happened? Berit, did you experience a shift?
For me, it's so much easier to notice that shift because I clocked where I was beforehand. Yeah, I've done breathing exercises before, but in this moment, because I stopped to check beforehand, I can feel that I've changed.
Good. And even in my own body, I was a little more nervous beforehand, and now I feel a little bit more even keel, a little bit more centered. So let's move on to our
Yeah.
second for this week, the eyes. The eyes look at a metaphorical horizon, and in Chicago, I can literally go to the beach and see Lake Michigan and the horizon. But it's your eyes looking straight forward rather than slightly up or slightly down. Head is just perched and we look forward. That's the horizontal gaze, to which we add a few other things. Imagine that you can feel your eyes in the center of the sockets. So they're not forward bugging out and they're not resting back and relaxed. They're right in the center. And visually, I'm aware of everything I can see in the room. I can see my lights, my computer, my water. So I can tell you everything I can see. I'm very present. Next, how far can you see left and right by keeping your eyes on the horizon? And above and below. I'm aware of the top of my light. I can see my knees. I can see out the window. I can see to the door. Take stock of your entire panoramic field of vision. And now add the breath back in through the nose when you want it. Out through the mouth with a little bit of effort in the lips. A few more cycles. Same amount of counts and duration inhale. Same amount of counts and duration on your exhale. Did your eyes go away from the horizon? If so, just lovingly bring them back. Did you lose your breath? In through the nose, out through the mouth with a little effort in the lips. One more on your own without me talking. And again, now notice adding a second component. Did anything shift? And if so, what was it? And how different? Berit, what were your perceptions?
I never think about the eyes as being something that we can use to regulate our emotional state. And so adding the eyes on the horizon with an awareness of up, down, left, right to the inhale and exhale, that got me into a shift quickly. That really brought me to a centered place without thinking. I mean, I was aware that I had thoughts, right? But
Yeah.
that was what my eyes and my breath were doing for me, and I feel clear, aware, and focused.
Nice. So yes, it's not a thought-based strategy. It's a physical-based strategy. And there are many granularities that we can talk about that it brings us to. A lot of people report calm or focused or directed.
What's great about this is that there is science and research behind why this works, especially so because this is linked to our physicality and measurable outcomes. So, Matthew, can you point out a few of the research topics on
Yeah.
getting to a zero state?
Yeah. So unfortunately, performer training doesn't have a lot of empirical evidence behind it. So when we say something is evidence-based, it means in the environment and context which it exists, it's being studied directly. And we just don't have a lot of evidence base for performing arts. There's some, specifically in voice and other things, but just not a lot here with this. It's so new as a field, this emotional regulation for performers. So we're working on getting those studies, but we can look at evidence from emotional regulation and other ventures and make a little bit of a correlation gently in a non-scientific way. One interesting scientific concept is respiratory sinus arrhythmia. That means, what are those pauses between heartbeats? This is well documented in emotional regulation literature, and we're going to have a few links for you that you can click on. The simple explanation is every time you breathe in, your heart rate increases. Every time you breathe out, your heart rate slows down. So in a context of zero, if I'm connecting the dots, maybe what happens is that I equalize myself. So I'm not in a reactionary state where I need to activate, and I'm not in a calm state where I need to relax. I'm somewhere in between the two. The RSA evens out. We need more evidence for that. But if we look at the literature review surrounding emotional intelligence and emotional regulation with RSA, a lot of these studies point to these trends. When it comes to eyes, neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Huberman, who's an ophthalmologist as well, talks about panoramic vision. When we drop in panoramic vision, the left and right, up and down, while gazing at the horizon, it does a similar thing to equalizing our breath, meaning I'm not in a meditative gaze where I'm zoning out and I'm going to a television and I'm unseeing, I'm not aware of my environment. That's not what this is. Nor is it hyper aware of everything going on in the room and needing to tend with it. It's in between those two states. It's present, it's aware, it's focused. It's not soft and it's not laser point. It's in between, it's zero. And so when we combine these two things, even keel RSA, even keel visual response, we get closer to zero. Because when we feel threatened, we start to look around, right?
Mm.
That's a sense of trying to get that panoramic vision to see what the potential threat is. But when we're aware of everything and our eyes are steady, I got this. I'm aware of my environment and I'm in control. So it
Yes.
takes that trying to regulate from a nervous, fearful place of taking in the environment and saying, I'm at peace and I'm aware.
I think it's so interesting regarding the eyes. And as someone who wears contacts and wakes up in the morning and has a bunch of blurry vision and then has the experience of adding the glasses and noticing how that impacts my day, I feel like that's something I have no control over. That's just I need to apply glasses. But it's so interesting to think that when we get to a difficult conversation or a heightened moment where something changes really quickly and we're very emotional, we can use the eyes to regulate. And I think the science behind that is so fascinating.
Here's a note for folks who may be visually disabled or blind. The same principle works with hearing. So we just substitute eyes for ears, pointing ourselves in a direction and listening in all directions for the sounds in the ambient room. Our brain, so I'm told from neuroscientists, will process that information in a similar type of mapping that it does from sight. So we can find a zero hearing response with the zero breath that will regulate and bring us to an even keel, calm place.
I would say 2 or 3 of the takeaways here are, to summarize, you have to be able to, your first intention should be to take a baseline
Always.
quickly. Context. What's your social context? Your environmental context? Physicality. What's your body feeling like? And then mental, or the mind. What are you focused on? What are you curious about? Your quick baseline assessment before you hop into zero. And
Yes.
then there's 4 components to zero. And the 2 that we just experienced, as Matthew led us through that exercise, are the breath and the eyes. And in the next episode, we're going to explore face and body. And there is a really important message here, is that this is something we have agency over. If you're someone who experiences social anxiety or feeling out of control, we often think that our body's doing this to us. Like, what's happening to my body?
Yes.
Something as simple as where you put your eyes, where you look, where you decide to look, how you decide to hold your eyes, how you decide to breathe. That is a decision you make. That's something that you have agency, and we can control, which I don't like the word control, but I like feeling autonomy, the feeling of being able to influence our own emotional state, influence ourselves into a state of zero.
It's remarkable when you start to learn that the emotions don't hijack you. They're trying to tell you something. They're a key message for you to organize and do something. They're a call to action. Now, whether you wish to take the call to action is up to you, but to have a strategy to say, I need to think about that call to action, I need a pause, that is so empowering when we can go, hold on, let me check in with that. I accept that that's how I'm feeling, but is that what I need and what I want? Rather than just to go along with it. You don't have to take that journey necessarily. And that is autonomy. That is so powerful.
Yes, yes. Snaps to that. Yes.
So Susanna Block gave us this great methodology for achieving zero. And in album emoting, she calls it the neutral breath and the step out, which is a physicalized version. Again, I've explained why I don't use neutral. I don't think it's the most helpful term, but that's what it's called in Alba emoting and Alba method if you research that, so that you can find that directly there. But there are other performance methodologies that have similar correlations and similar training. Berit, can you tell us a little bit about Professor Richard Schechner's Rasaboxes, which you're trained in, and correlations between zero and something in that methodology?
So Richard Schechner is the founder of the field of performance studies and a director, and he created this actor training technique called Rasaboxes. In doing all the different Rasaboxes workshops that I've participated in, the concept of Shanta correlates so much to the concept of zero. So there's some significant overlap. So I'll just explain briefly the setup of Rasaboxes and where Shanta specifically fits in. Richard describes Shanta as either the perfect harmony of every emotion or the absence of every emotion entirely. So there, in the technique, there is a grid of 9 squares on the floor. Let's imagine them about 5 feet by 5 feet each square. And in the very center of those squares is one that's labeled Shanta. Now around it, there are different labels for each box that are also in Sanskrit. As you may recognize, Shanta is a Sanskrit word. And each of those boxes around Shanta refers to a category of emotions. And the exercise is about, how do you embody that? How do you, with your face, posture, breath, movement, and tone of voice, embody Shanta? Now, without going into all the other exercises regarding all the other emotions and boxes, I can remember one specifically that I'd like to share. So I was standing in Shanta, and the goal is to maintain zero, essentially. It's not defined as such, but as we've just described it, the goal is to maintain an external blankness, an external state of zero. And the interesting thing about this exercise was that people all around me were emoting very strongly in a lot of different types of emotions. And having to hold on to my own blank face, blank posture, blank expression, tone of voice, movement, while those strong emotions of anger, emotions of silliness and giggles, emotions of disgust were going on around me. That is a key performance training technique for the actors to practice. And here I was standing thinking, I am holding a boundary right now. This reminds me of when I've had really heated family conversations and I'm needing to maintain my zero state. And so you can imagine, Matthew, like implying 1,000 other scenarios onto that, right? But it has to do with, in that moment there was a light bulb for me that I can do this with my body. I can hold this boundary with my body in spite of everything that's going on around me. And I thank Richard for that exercise and for also contextualizing. I I think that Shanta is a not exactly the same, but a really interesting parallel concept to explore alongside zero.
I agree. And something you said is so important. When you're at the center of the Rasaboxes grid, to remain with discipline in Shanta.
Mm-hmm.
That discipline is what helps us to not experience emotional contagion, to be in a crowd that is going rowdy and you are not. You are choosing something else, which brings us back to our pillar of autonomy. By practicing
Yes.
zero, we're practicing autonomy by putting ourselves in a nonlinear situation where other people are in very heightened emotions and we are not. We learn greater discipline and reliance, and we build more autonomy. So thank you for that visual image that's so powerful, and gratitude to our teachers. You studied directly with Richard, right?
Yes, Richard was a mentor of mine and reader on my thesis as I created emotive agility training based on that work, bringing it outside of the performance space because I thought right there in that moment, only performers are privy to this. This is so impactful for people who are not performers. And how will they be able to access this? And I created emotive agility training as a pathway to access that type of training for non-actors.
And though I didn't get to study directly with Susanna Block, who's still with us and living in Chile, my teacher, Nancy Loitz, was one of the first Americans to come back and bring the ALBA emoting and ALBA method to the States. And I had similar thoughts as I was going, this is amazing for personal life, for professionals, for actors. For me, I wanted to go farther with the science into facial expression and body and gestures and voice. And so I created Emoverity as a response to making it a little bit more complex, finding a cumulative way for performers beyond just emotional induction and regulation. But I have immense gratitude for Susanna Block and for my teacher, Nancy Loitz, who taught me the emotional effector patterns initially. So praise to our mentors.
I'm so excited to synthesize all of that into this podcast that brings us full circle. I hope that every one of these episodes is a glimpse or a nugget or a takeaway on some of the learnings that you've had and that I've had that we can translate.
Absolutely. Please try these techniques of zero, the breath and the eyes, and let us know how it goes. Also, if you are a performer and you have something similar in your training, we'd love to hear about it. So drop that in the comments in the message too, so we can keep the dialogue going.
Also, if you try this out, let us know what type of scenario this helps you in, whether it's a performance scenario or your personal or professional life. Let us know where you practice zero and how it had an impact.
We look forward to concluding the zero in our next episode for embodying the pause. In the meantime, we leave you with this mantra. Berit.
Yes. All the world's a stage, and we're living on the edge of it.
Till next time.